Let's get to the position where it all starts on offense, and that's the quarterback. Last year's starter, JT Daniels, is gone, but they have several guys in that room who return, most notably A.J. Paget. However, they also dipped their talents into the portal and brought in E.J. Warner from Temple. Would you say it's appropriate to call it a quarterback battle, or can we assume that this is E.J. Warner's job?
The official company line is no starter has been named. But I'm telling you guys right now, E.J. Warner's the starting quarterback. Bar none. That's the answer. They didn't bring this guy in, son of NFL legend Kurt Warner, to ride the bench. Nobody gets promised anything in this program, but EJ had the better spring. He's proven it at the American Conference level, back-to-back years leading the league in passing. Which you look at the quarterbacks that have been in this year, the past couple of years, like there's been some really like NFL caliber guys that he's outthrown. So EJ Warner will be the starting quarterback for Rice football.
You know, Warner last season missed some games with injuries and stuff. Did he look fully healthy in the spring?
Yeah, I mean, he looked right. No worse for wear. Everybody was kind of getting used to the offense, but no injury concerns whatsoever.
Moving over to the running game, they lost one of their 1-2 punch to graduation, Juma Ottaviano, but their leading running back returns from a year ago, Dean Connors. Do we expect them to continue using a two-back rotation, or do we see Connors tote the rock even more in 2024?
So if you go back to Mike Bloomgren's days when he was the offensive coordinator with Andrew Luck at Stanford, he had a bell cow for most of the years where he was running that offense. Well, he had Christian McCaffrey there. So we kind of, other than the Christian McCaffrey experience, it's kind of been a couple of guys. And if you look at Dean Connors, he is not, your 250-pound bruiser that is going to take 100 hits. He's kind of the guy that he's best when you can get him in space. And he's probably the best athlete they have on the field. So they're going to get him involved a lot, but I don't think you're going to see him in between the tackles 20 plays a game. That's just not where he's utilized best. So they are going to kind of spell him at times and kind of utilize a couple other guys in that room. It was kind of a 1-2 punch with Juma last year, a fifth-year senior, an experienced guy who had a 230-yard rushing game as a freshman. But I don't know if that other guy is there quite yet. So I think it's probably going to be 70-30 Dean and then mixing in a couple other guys as well.
Can we expect Dalen Alexander continue his role of that goal line back in 2024?
I mean, the only reason he lost it is he got hurt. You go into going into week 5 of the season last year, he led the nation in touchdowns. He had like 8 touchdowns in 4.5 games or something before he got hurt. It was insane. And we've seen, Rice has utilized kind of a goal line back at that position. It was Ari Broussard before him. Emmanuel Supka had some goal line stuff. You just keep going back. So, yeah, they'll utilize a guy they trust at the goal line. Dean, because Dalen's still working back, wasn't fully healthy in the spring. Dean did that in the spring. So he's more than capable. So they're not just going to pull him out to go put somebody else in. But I think, you get down and you find yourself in the red zone, you reset, bring out the jumbo package. Dalen will most likely be the guy who gets a lot of short yardage scores.
With a new quarterback in that system, Dean Connors was very involved last year in the passing game. Do you think that continues here in 2024, or that we might even see him more involved?
I think it has to, just because he's one of the best athletes on the field, and good coaches get the ball in the hands of your best athletes. And I know we'll talk about him in a little bit, but Luke McCaffrey no longer on this team. So that was your number one, target hog, the guy you want to get the ball to. If you look at guys who have proven it and done it, Dean Connors is one of the best receivers, pass catchers on this team right now. They have a bunch of young guys that they're really excited about that I think are obviously, as outside, inside receivers, going to get more targets, going to get more receptions downfield than Dean. But yeah, I think, what did he finish last year? Probably in the 20s, something of receptions. I would be surprised if you're not looking at like probably three a game, probably just to get him the football.
They bring in a really fast and exciting true freshman in Tajee Atkins. Do you think that they have some plays or packages just for him to utilize that outlet or that outstanding speed?
So Tajee's really interesting because, and you can actually go back to Dalen last year. I think everybody preaches that it's a meritocracy and the best man plays, but we've really seen Mike Bloomgren and OC Marcus Tuiasosopo stick to that in their time at Rice. So the only reason that Dalen got on the field at all last year is actually somebody got hurt in practice and he had to go in and the goal line package just at practice and was so good at it, he kept the job. So with Taji, like the talent is absolutely there. Can he show it in practice and can he prove that he belongs on the field? If he can do that, if you look at just who is the best pure rusher of the football on the team, he's a true freshman. He hasn't done it at the collegiate level, but Taji has the ability to be special. He's a really, really good back. And, you know, the Rice staff is just giddy that they were able to get him on campus.
Did anyone else in that room stick out to you this spring?
They had a bunch of guys that were hurt. So Dean kind of shuffled in. He did a lot of it. There were probably, I'm just trying to think through. I don't know if anybody that got a lot of reps this spring is probably going to be a true traditional running back. Quentin Jackson is probably the guy who had the most highlight plays. I think he might have ended up leading the team in rushing in the spring game. He is kind of like a hybrid guy, can kind of catch the ball a little bit on the outside, kind of a speed option kind of guy. So he's quick. He proved he can run a little bit between the tackles, but on the smaller side. So I think he's a guy you'll probably see in the return game mixed in a little bit, and you'll probably see him here and there. But I don't think anybody from the spring, and this has kind of been the thing with Rice in the past, especially with the running back position, is they're going to trust their guys, the top ones. And for the most part, that's probably going to be Dean, Dalen, fingers crossed, maybe Taji a little bit too.
Moving back to that passing game, as you mentioned earlier, that they lose NFL third-round wide receiver and all-conference first-teamer Luke McCaffrey, but they bring back just about everyone else. They also nabbed a couple transfers who have yet to make it on campus. How did the wide receivers look in the spring?
It was really interesting because you really got to see Luke McCaffrey just commanded the football. He was so good that you threw him the ball, and a bunch of other guys last year you saw at times had big plays, but it's different when you're the guy that is the guy. So that's really the only question that we weren't able to answer this spring, because you got to see it on Saturday, when the bullets are flying and somebody not wearing blue is trying to hit you. I think the two guys that are primed to take the next step, Ross and McNeil, he's going to kind of slot in as their primary outside X guy, a big, sturdy frame, had a couple highlight catches last year, has the potential playmaker. He's a redshirt sophomore at this point. So this will be fourth year on campus. So they're really excited about him. And then the other guy is Landon Ransom Goals, who actually started opening day against Texas as a true freshman. And that might not seem too notable maybe, but I'm racking my brain. And I asked head coach Mike Bloomgren this at the time. I said, and remember, this is a guy who coached Christian McCaffrey and a bunch of first-round tight ends at Stanford, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, like NFL caliber guys. I was like, when's the last time a true freshman started for you at a skill position? And he's like, man, I don't know. So Landon got on the field game one and kind of separated himself. Kind of took him a couple weeks to get up to the speed of the college game. But you look at a guy who can play all over the field, shifty, really fast. He's probably the other guy. Him, Landon, and Rawson are the two that I think they're targeting for. If somebody is on campus that's going to step into that big role, it's going to be one of those two guys.
So you already mentioned Ransom and McNeil, but they also bring another exciting sophomore back in Braylon Walker. What can you tell us about him?
Braylon Walker is the guy that when he's had the chance to get on the field, he's been pretty productive. You look at, he came out at his redshirt season where they basically were so injury depleted that they put him out the last game of the season against North Texas to try and get to a bowl game. This would have been 2 seasons ago, and he had something like 100 all-purpose yards and a touchdown out of nowhere. Had a couple big plays in the bowl game, and nobody had heard of this guy. So he's shifty. He can play the slot. They really like his speed. For him, it's just been consistency. You talk about some of the guys in that room, everybody's coming back. A bunch of veteran guys who do things the right way, and that's not to say he's not. But when you have such a logjam of guys in front of you, sometimes it's hard to get on the field. So I don't know how much snaps he's going to get when he does get on the field. They are going to try and get him the football a little bit because he can make some plays in space. He has pretty impressive acceleration.
Is there anyone else in that room that you think we should know about moving into 2024?
Those are the big guys. A guy that is probably two guys worth mentioning that I think are interesting. Max Sykes is a transfer from UCLA, and the staff was really excited about him last year. Got hurt, banged up, and never just kind of really clicked. Rawson right now is the ex McNeil that they're going to slot in, but it's college football. Injuries happen. They're going to need somebody else. So he's the kind of guy that I'm not going to be stunned if we're in week 6 or 7 and he kind of takes charge. So we'll see. Could be nothing. Could kind of grow into a bigger role if he kind of established himself. He's one guy. And the other one is Kobe Campbell, who converted running back, came in and has kind of morphed into a slot receiver, has been there for the past couple years. He is the veteran man in the room right now. And he's kind of been, kind of that third or fourth option for most of his collegiate career, caught a couple passes here and there. Kind of guy that you're looking through this roster of who can you just kind of send to maybe take the top off and kind of take a couple shots downfield. Wouldn't be surprised if he has a big touchdown grab or two. Again, not a heavy target guy, might not get a ton of playing time as, the younger guys mature, but he's the kind of guy, especially early in the season, I think you could see a decent amount on the field.
If you were to describe the tight end usage for this offense to somebody who's never caught a game, how would you describe it?
It's the NFL. This is a pro style offense. You go look at the list of guys that, have come from Stanford. Zach Ertz, probably the big one, that have just kind of flourished in the NFL and had big years. They came under Mike Bloomgren at Stanford, and he just kind of set up shop and brought it here. So if you look at one in college football, you're not going to see a bunch of tight ends, and the ones you have are going to be either pure blockers or kind of that, we stick him on the line, but he's really our fifth receiver. You're going to have guys in this offense that do it all, that play in all formations, that know the entire offense, or run blockers and pass catchers. So they're going to be heavily involved. And we've seen, Jack Bradley is a guy who was there for years, did pretty well. Jager Bull did a lot of good things in the run game that have been through here in this offense. And now we got the next guy coming up in Bowden Groen that is probably the best pass catcher out of all of those combined, is kind of taken the leap from the JUCO ranks a couple years ago and really established himself. So yeah, this is an offense that's going to use the tight end and use it heavily.
So if I'm going to read between the lines here, we got EJ Warner coming over from Temple. He targeted the tight ends frequently at Temple. We've got Groen, who returns, and he was the second on the team in routes run last year and third in receiving. What are we looking like here in 2024 when those two combine?
Well, and the crazy thing is Groen wasn't the starter. He was the backup to Jack Bradley until probably game 9 or 10, when Bradley got hurt and Groen became the starter the rest of the way. I mean, he played a ton and he was their pass catching guy. So he was on the field a lot, obviously, but we're looking at an even bigger role. And especially when you're looking at the guys behind him, they got a couple D2, D3 transfers, some freshmen that are coming along that might have more specialized roles. But if you look at a guy who's going to be on the field every single play, just about, it's going to be Bowden Groen. So, yeah, I mean, you talk about a red zone safety blanket, and you talk about a guy who's more athletic over the middle field than some of those linebackers he's going to be matched up against. Yeah, I mean, it's a recipe for what could be a really special season for Bowden Groen.
Moving over to the offensive line, they lose starting left tackle Clay Servin, but they brought in a few transfers like Chad Lindbergh from Georgia and Spencer Cassell from Harvard. Rice has to be excited about the other offensive linemen that are returning. What can you tell us about how those guys looked in the spring?
It was pretty exciting, not because we got any real clarity. I think the last couple springs here, it's been saying, okay, who can we find 5 guys that can play these positions? And this year truly was the first year where it's like, well, shoot, they have 10, maybe 11 guys. It's who are we going to put on the field? I mean, you lose Clay Servin, and that's a big piece, but Ethan Oniana is a guy that, like, people around the program and NFL scouts have come to go check out, and he's going to move from right tackle to left tackle. They're really excited about him. You bring back Braden Nutter at center, and then you have a bunch of guys that you could plug in. Brant Banks, another all-conference, AAC all-conference guy going into the season that you're going to put down at the other tackle. And then you're choosing between, a Georgia transfer. You're choosing between guys that have started, 30, 40 collegiate games at the D1 level to plug in at your guard spot. So right now we're just kind of sorting through is like, I don't even know if I could tell you for certain who's going to line up those guard spots, but this is the deepest this roster has been in a long time up front, which is pretty exciting, especially we talk about Dean Connors in the running game. Music to his ears, I'm sure.
If you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, Matt, who are you picking?
I think Dean Connors is not allowed. I think if you follow allowed. Rice, well, if you follow Rice football, Dean Connors having a breakout season shouldn't surprise you. If you do not follow Rice football and you have not heard of Dean Connors' name, you will know who he is. So that's the shoe-in answer. If we're just talking that a guy in large who's going to become a national name, it's Dean Connors, absolutely. But if you're looking for maybe a guy under the radar that might not have come into his own yet, I'm going to go Rawson McNeil, because you got a good quarterback, a really good quarterback. He's going to need a go-to wide receiver. And man, they like those big body guys that can go up and get it. And that's Rawson. So if he can put it all together, I think you're looking at a guy who can become, that alpha in the offense. They need somebody to step up. It might be him.